Welcome, trailblazers and visionaries, to the Forging Manufacturing Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Hampton.
And I'm your co-host, Jason Flores.
So in the last episode, was packed with so much good information. We did run a bit long. And now, Jason, I'm excited to get back into our discussion with futurist Jim Carroll. We left everyone hanging on the final top 10.
Yeah, all right. Let's get into it.
So, Jim, what are we talking about now? Kind of as we're getting out of the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, it's given where we were and given what we've learned, I sort of tried to put some thought together to like, now what happens? Where do we go next? And look, I think the big issue is, I think we're going to see the emergence, for lack of a better phrase, let's call it the chief resilience officer. If you read the manufacturing literature, and it's not just manufacturer, it's every single industry, resiliency is I think the really big word that is out there. Supply chain management and broken supply chains. Look, when that ship got stuck in the Suez Canal, that freaked out a lot of executives because we realized how weak our supply chains were. So we've got to build in more resilience in terms of product sourcing and in terms of process and in terms of manufacturing and in terms of visibility. I think we're going to see this emerge as a really key figure going forward. Look, obviously we're talking about deglobalization strategies. I think that, what we learned through this is that while offshoring has presented us a lot of cost and price advantages demanded by the consumer, who increasingly chooses on price, maybe we do need to do a little bit more to pull some production back into our countries, whether it's the US where you are, Canada where I am. And again, this is not an easy issue, given the skills issue, and it's not going to happen by building walls and tariffs and bridges and borders and stuff like that. It does take hard work, but I think we are seeing an increasing number of organizations having realistic discussions about how might we, possibly accomplish some deglobalization. With those two, obviously comes a new focus on redundancy and agility. We get another ship stuck in the Suez. How quickly can we get around it? How quickly can we source what we need? How quickly can we change our supply chain once again? How quickly can we redesign our product, to deal with faster paced consumer change? Number four, what we were just speaking about is, how do we take what we learned through COVID in terms of our ability to act so fast, and the fact we didn't need committees anymore, and we learned to operate at speed. How do we bank that going forward? I think I'm seeing a lot of more focus by organizations on how do we crystallize the very real change that we went through, so that we don't lose what we had. How do we not go back to where we were before? I think obviously COVID is not going to go away, and there will be regions which will continue to have outbreaks, partly due to vaccination hesitancy and issues like that. And so I think we will continue to see more reliance on robotics and robots coming out of the cage, and how do we utilize technology to provide for that distancing on the factory floor for this or for the next pandemic. What I just alluded to is, I think workplaces, manufacturing companies are now faced with a lot of really difficult decisions. Are we going to bring in a manufacturing workforce, staff who have refused to take a vaccine? We've seen this occur in the world of healthcare, right? And do you want to subject yourself to cost pressure and outbreak costs and potential plant closures because you're hiring people who haven't been vaccinated? And I think it extends beyond that. I'm working on a trend right now, and I'm trying to do it very carefully because this will become a very real political issue. There are certain regions who have higher rates of hesitancy, lower vaccination rates: Alabama, Mississippi, Missouri. Do I want to relocate a manufacturing facility into such a region when it puts me at higher volatility and cost risk? Probably not. I spoke over the years to a lot of organizations that made the big decisions on where to locate massive manufacturing plants. Two of them go by the names of Coronet and the Industrial Asset Management Council. And these are the senior executives for GM and Ford and consumer product companies who make the big decisions on where to locate future factories. Are they going to want to place future factories in regions that aren't aligning to science? This is a huge issue. And I think we're going to see a lot more discussion around that.
Can I stop you there first? So what are you hearing there?
I'm hearing bubblings of concern. I'm beginning to hear people talking about that. I'm beginning to hear people beginning to say, like, do we really want to subject ourselves to that risk?
Yeah.
We've got higher vaccination rates in the Northeast and the Northwest and California. And hey, maybe those are safer locations. Canada, look where I am. We're now #1 in the world in terms of first dose. And we're probably going to be #1 in second dose, almost fully vaccinated population, 85% by the end of July. And I think this bodes really well for us in putting out a message to the world that, hey, look, we're a good place to locate your next facility. I think this is going to be a huge issue. And I think it's only beginning to bubble up to the surface. But my prediction is this is going to be a big discussion within a year. Look at what happened with the Bruce Springsteen concert. We're only going to allow people in who've been vaccinated. It's all political. But it's not just political. I think it's a bigger issue than that. And I think governments, regions need to recognize the risk of continuing to go down this path.
I just think it's amazing the conversations and decisions that are being made or having to be discussed now that we're not a year and a half, 2 years ago. So I just find that fascinating. And that happens all the time, but this is, crossing the lines of political, economical. It's fascinating to me. So.
Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of keynotes over the years on the future of economic development and what regions would manage to go ahead and what were the attributes of those regions. So, I mean, I was already, had in my mind. For example, the state of Nevada had me in a few years ago. What do we need to do in Nevada to align ourselves to the faster future? And, I was talking about things like, well, if we set up autonomous, car testing tracks, and if we, set up the infrastructure that, for advanced solar and advanced microgrid connectivity, if we align ourselves to the trends which are redefining entire industries, that gives us good economic opportunity. But now we're spinning into this new, potentially dangerous phase for regions. And this, I think this is going to be one of the biggest trends going forward. And I'm trying to address it very carefully because we know we're in a very complex world. Number 7, a need for better supply chain insight. I mean, we got volatility and resiliency and, ships getting stuck in the Suez Canal. Like we need to continue relentlessly going down that path. I think we're going to see a lot more direct to consumer strategies. We liked e-commerce. Look, in 1999, I wrote a book called Selling Online, How to Become a Successful E-commerce Merchant. And a lot of people said, dumb idea. People are never going to buy stuff online. And look where we are now. I think a vast number of people have discovered the power, the convenience of purchasing direct. And I think this has a real impact on manufacturers because we have to accelerate a lot of direct to consumer strategies. And that means re-examining what we're doing in logistics, with shipping and airlines and last mile delivery and pick and pack. And just e-commerce has changed the world, and manufacturing companies are a part of that for a number of them. So how do we align to that? And this one isn't really consumer or isn't really pandemic related, but look, for 25 years, I've been saying we've been putting ourselves at increased security risk because we don't pay proper attention to IT security. You take a look at the typical board of directors. We've got somebody who's responsible for executive compensation, somebody responsible for HR, somebody for legal, somebody for audit. You don't have an IT person on the board of directors of a Ford or a GM or a major manufacturing company. And so the result is we get these, ransomware attacks and security holes. And if we're putting in IIoT, industrial Internet of Things, into our factories, and somebody can come along and do a thing and demand crypto to let your factory floor run again. This not pandemic related, but I think it's part of this whole trend of everything was becoming fast and connected before, and now we're dealing with these new and complex issues.
I'd even argue that the pandemic has increased the risk there, right? Just because of the virtualization of a lot of businesses. I mean, we talked to some of these, brick and mortar, forever everybody was in their facility, in their manufacturing facility. And now you've got engineers working, at home. IP is sitting, kind of outside of some of their firewalls, protected in some instances less than it's ever been. So, I'd say it's very much a real, pandemic, COVID related issue.
Yeah, it actually is. That's a very good point. I mean, it used to be you were trying to protect that PC in the office and somebody coming up and putting a USB stick into it and walking away with your product plans. And now that computer is sitting at home, and this is potentially huge going forward.
Yeah, I think your point number 8, accelerating direct to consumer strategies. There was a large tool manufacturing company. This is pre-COVID. It was very concerned about the Amazon Basic tools, right? They were afraid that those types of tools were going to take away a little bit of their business. And that, we've seen that accelerate throughout the pandemic. And even now you're still seeing empty shelves in your Home Depots or Lowe's stores too. So that to me is a really, really powerful point, and something that manufacturers need to think about and to address.
Well, and it's also part of this whole trend. Another trend I was talking about pre-pandemic, the accelerating bar of expectations. Look, as a consumer, we all expect every retailer we interact with to operate at the same level of professionalism as Amazon. Like, that bar is there, and it keeps getting higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And the same holds true for a manufacturer when they're impacted by direct to consumer. So if you're going to sell stuff online, you've got to be equally as sophisticated as what Amazon gets. Where's my package? Real-time shipping updates, 2-day delivery versus the cost for 10-day delivery. I mean, it's just business is it was complex before the pandemic, and now it's even way more complex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm an optimist, and so when we get done hearing these 30 things from you, and I think it's interesting that I look at it as opportunity, right? Everything, if you run and hide from it, you should be scared, right? You're right. All of these things are real, but these are our opportunities, and that's where, if we go back to the point, it's where the small new competitors are coming out. The small can compete with the large. I think a lot of this has just shined a light on the opportunities, and for those to be able to think fast, scale big, it's just, to me, it makes me feel, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but it makes me feel hopeful for a lot of those that have kind of struggled and made it through the pandemic.
Yeah, look, a guy like me I'm a walking phrase machine, and one of my favorite phrases I would use on stage was, I'll give you 2, which are sort of opportunity based. The first one is, some people see the future and see a threat. Innovators see the same future and see an opportunity. Right. So it's all about how you view the future. And look, I knew when I got on stage, there was like 1/3 of the audience that did not like me. And I used to read this, the evaluations, and my God, what am I doing up there? What I came to realize was that they would not like me regardless of what I said, because they do not want to align to the future. They don't like the future. The future is a threat. The future is a problem. The future is a challenge. And I would try to carefully address that by putting up a picture from a movie when the Jetsons met the Flintstones, and explaining that, look, we're all going into the world of the Jetsons, but we got a bunch of Flintstones around, and that's our challenge. That's our leadership challenge. Today, the other phrase I used a lot, and I think this really captures the essence of our world, and you got to take it as an opportunity. We're now in a situation in which companies that do not yet exist will build products not yet conceived, using materials not yet invented, with methodologies not yet in existence, selling these unknown products to consumers who don't yet know that they want and need those products. You can take that as a scary comment, and it is kind of scary, or you can look at it and go, wow, like there's nothing but opportunity in that phrase. And there is, because we don't know exactly where we're going. We're making great time, and it's just I'm an optimist always on this stuff. I couldn't walk out on stage and say, guess what, your future sucks. I wouldn't get a lot of repeat business. I would be relentless on the optimism, because I think there's just so much potential, and it goes to your key point. For a small organization today, you have unprecedented opportunity to compete and be a player in ways that never existed before.
That's so true. And you know, these companies with that laggard mindset, they just have to change that mindset, right, in order to succeed in the future.
Or they disappear. So previous economic downturns or periods of economic uncertainty, I dug out this study from GE years ago, and they looked at what organizations did during periods of economic uncertainty. So the downturn of 2008 and the dot-com bust 2001 and the 97 recession, the 93 recession, they found that 60% of organizations sort of muddled their way through. They didn't really capitalize on what they learned. They didn't make any big decisions. 30% didn't make it. They disappeared. They went bankrupt. They were bought out. 10% became breakthrough performers because they thought big and bold, and they pursued big ideas. And you want to be a part of that 10% right now, because there's so much opportunity, that comes with this.
Yeah. Is it always a top-down thing from your perspective? I mean, does that always start at the very top, or is it just, I mean, I guess maybe it's too common sense that everybody has to be involved with it. But I mean, those organizations that you've seen really take the opportunity and run with it, I mean, does that have to start from the top?
I think the tone is set at the top. I mean, it's with one CEO group. It was like a month after the market melted down in 2008. And, he got out to his team of 500 executives and he said, look, we got three choices. Number one, we can panic. Number two, we can do nothing. Or number three, we can innovate like crazy to get through this thing. And I remember sitting out in the audience, and I was about to go on stage to talk to them. And I was like, whoa, that's it right there. And I stole the phrase, and I use that incessantly over and over. So I think it's set from the tone at the top, but I think there's also a lot of power. I call it generational collaboration. Like that Amstead Rail story of those young engineers in the Google room. And then I found a company, Bison Trucking, up in Winnipeg, Canada, who had a Google room of, young engineers working with leading edge trucking technology. And then I discovered it in another company, generational collaboration, because, I think I'm 62, us older folks, sometimes don't understand the full range of the potential of what's possible in this new technology driven digital world. But if we can harness the insight of that younger generation, we've got, some sort of secret sauce.
Yeah, the idea of incubation has become so big, and those that allow those to incubate ideas or methodologies and tend to get something out of it, or find out what they shouldn't be doing. Right?
Exactly. Yes.
So, well, Jim, I can't thank you enough for joining our podcast. And is there anything that any words of wisdom? You've given us so many, and I know you've probably got more that you've held back, but is there anything that you'd like to leave the audience with today? As we move forward?
I actually filmed
thanks,
this
Jim.
clip a couple of weeks ago, and it sort of summarizes, I think, some of the thoughts of what we need to do and what we're faced with as we go forward. So if I play that out to close, and then I'll come back to to quickly say goodbye. But I think there's some good insight here into what we really need to think about, because what I'm really identifying, what I've done is I call it the acceleration gap. I used to explain that the future belonged to those who are fast, and there was this gap between our speed and the speed of change. The pandemic has made the gap bigger. And if you can't bridge the acceleration gap, you're increasingly going to fall behind. So let me play this, and I'll be back in just under 4 minutes. What is real is that we are running in a world fast to change with a massive voting holding us back from doing what we need to do to align to this faster future. We're putting in place these barriers. We're hiding behind walls in terms of our ability to keep up. And that's what we need to bridge with the gap. What I'm doing is, and I'm now putting in perspective for organizations who previously were dealing with the issue of fast-paced change, what they now need to do to bridge the gap. They need to understand how the gap is increasing, where it's increasing, the impact that has upon what they can do as they go forward into the future, and what they can accomplish by managing to bridge the gap. I want you to think about
what the winners through the pandemic have managed to accomplish in terms of their strategy, in terms of their skills, in terms of their capabilities. What happened to a lot of organizations is they had a better appreciation for the impact of digital transformation. My running joke has been that who led your digital transformation, your CEO, your CIO, your CTO? No, it was COVID-19. Organizations now understand the impact of digital transformation. And if you aren't one of them, that's the type of gap that you were faced with. Think about what happened during the last year as we increasingly moved fast. Organizations banished and eliminated committees. They banished and eliminated all the things which provided us for slow moving structure in a world that was fast. They were in a situation in which they learned how to accelerate external partnerships. If we don't have the right skills at the right time, for the right purpose, for the right situation, let's go get those skills. And what this has done, it has forever transformed their understanding of what they can accomplish in terms of taking on fast-paced issues. These are your new competitors. It provided organizations with a new ability to implement a very fast change to process, whether it's manufacturing process or the process of getting things done or the process of working something through their bureaucracy. It helped them understand that they can work in new and different ways. Really what it taught them is how do we assemble fast, nimble teams. The world of Zoom conference calls led to a situation in which fast-moving organizations realized that they could bring together a fast-moving team in an instant and take on new challenges, new situations, new complexities, and manage those issues extremely quickly. It led them to a situation in which they were dealing with faster business model disruption. There was no time to study the impact of the disruptive trends around them. They simply had to deal with the reality of what was occurring. It led them to a situation in which they saw the benefit of faster decision making. They cut through the bureaucracy, they cut through the slow moving process, which held them back from pursuing a fast-paced future. It led them to a situation in which they saw the impact of a flatter structure. We could do so many things by eliminating the layers which were in place, and this became a part of our ability to move quickly. They learned something new about how to deploy at speed. They always understood that the future belonged to those who were fast, and they got a sudden new appreciation of what that truly meant. These are staggering trends. It accelerated their ability in terms of product innovation. It led to a situation in which it saw the death of management by PowerPoint, which is probably one of the few good things to come out of the global pandemic, because CEOs and leaders realized we didn't have time to study these things to death. We didn't have time to put together pretty PowerPoint decks. We simply needed to get things done, and we need to do it now. Organizations have learned something new about how to test and manage their supply chain resilience, such that resilience, managing volatility, has become a core focus going forward. They learned to implement an extremely fast change to process. This is the gap that you're faced with. If you haven't done these things, if you haven't learned these lessons, you're now in a situation in which previously the future belonged to those who are fast. The future now belongs to those who are fast. You need to bridge.
I mean, that's it right now. The future used to belong to those who are fast. It now belongs to those who are faster. So I hear folks saying like, we're, thank gosh, we're, finally going back to where we were. We're not going back to where we were. We're going now to where we're going to be next, and it's going to be faster. There's going to be this acceleration gap, and it's a whole new ball game. And it really comes back to your key point. It's all about opportunity.
It is. Well, thank you again. And it's almost like you knew what our upcoming episode was going to be about next in digital transformation. And that's a topic that I'm sure, Jim, that you could probably talk on for days on end. And that's what we as a business, that's where we're focusing on with our manufacturing customers, is enabling that. And I'll say, if anybody that's listening hasn't already gone to check out jimcarroll.com, get a hold of the book, check out all the content that's up on the website that you don't even have to pay for. It's phenomenal. And I really look forward to the new book coming out. When is that?
So my wife is working on the final edit today. And again, this is a manufacturing story. So the cover will be finalized over in India within the week. And it actually goes up on a subsidiary of Amazon. Probably about 2 weeks, it'll be live on Amazon, and it's a print on demand product, right? All that matters with the book today is that you can buy it on Amazon, and it goes to a plant, I think in Charleston, North Carolina, and somebody buys a copy and it's printed. One copy is printed. I mean, that's the world of manufacturing right there. So
On
it
demand.
might actually be out in 2 weeks, and I just finished writing it. So it's a crazy world we find ourselves in. Listen, thanks for having me. And I'm spending a lot of time golfing these days. And the guys I golf with, they know I talk a lot. They know I like to talk a lot. Maybe they got a little bit sick of me. So it's nice to, get into a forum where we can talk about stuff where I'm not driving my golf buddies nuts.
Yeah, well, the pleasure was all ours. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right.